Pastor Suzy Antoun, daughter of the Most High from rivers of living water. This is our second part. We're talking about the Elephantine temple who was in the land of Egypt. And here, like I was describing, that after Babylon invading the whole world, there came the empire of the Pharisee people. And there was the king, which was anointed. Even he is not a king, a Jewish king, or worshiping Jehovah, Yahweh, but God anointed him, and he was the one who awakened his spirit to build the temple of God in Jerusalem. And you find it in Isaiah 45 that he's anointed. So that's very strange, because God spoke to him to send the people back home to donate and to rebuild the temple. That was after the destruction of Babel destroyed the temple of God. And here, when he came and Egypt was taken part of his empire, he wanted to put on the border. So his border is not on the Nile river, like on the central part, like Cairo or Giza or whatever, on the pyramid place, but he wanted to put this defense on the border of his empire, which was down to Aswan, down to the end of the Nile. He reached that area. And he had the Jews, the Jews had favor on his side, and he was putting them there on the border to protect, like people to defend, like army working for him to defend the border of his empire, the Iranian Empire. So that's why that temple was built on that area. Later on, you can read into the word of God when, he gave the decree of building the temple and invite people to go. But the temple was not built on his time, and there was maybe second and third on the time of Darius, when the temple of Jerusalem was built. And we're gonna talk about that part again. But here is the thing, the Iranian people are supposed to be Jewish or enter into the fellowship, the worship of Jehovah, Yahweh. But they didn't, and that's very strange for me, because they had the favor of building the temple of God in Jerusalem. And you're gonna see here, again, they were putting these Jewish people that they trusted them on the border of their empire to defend it. Later on in time, when the Jerusalem temple was built, there was an argument here. We cannot have God dwelling into two places, because they believe the dwelling of God is in the temple. So God cannot be in Jerusalem and can be on the Elephantine temple on the same time. And they want them to destroy that temple. But the Iranian people of the time, the king of the time, they didn't want to destroy the temple of Elephantine. And they reduced, instead of having animal sacrifice and worship, like really the whole style of worship, they make it only for grain offerings, and they limit it. And they didn't want to destroy it. So here is another good point on the favor of the Iranian people, which if I was Iranian, I would put those things in front of God and ask for revelation, because they probably had God into their knowledge, and they knew that he was a true God, and they didn't receive him. Same thing happened. God gave a big revelation to Nebuchadnezzar and to his even the written on the wall on his grandson. And he was 7 years walking like an animal around the forest and whatever, and then God restored his position, and he raised his eyes and said, "You are the real God." Why all the Iraqi nations or the Babylonian empire was not turned to the real worship of God, who was the God of the Jew on the time? So here are the questions, because this is what decides the fate of nations. The fate of nations is decided by God reveal himself to the royalty, king, or to the president, whatever. And it's up to them to decide which way to go, and they will decide the fate of the whole nation. So here the Iranian, the Pharisee people, let me talk about the name which was given to them on the time they had that temple built. Now we can compare that event with the event which happened into the time of the son of Solomon. Solomon lived with women, and God was dishonored by these acts of him. So he decided that he's gonna split the nation and give, because of the honor of David, he's gonna keep some people following Solomon, and the penalty will not be in Solomon's time, but in his son. So when his son came, Rehoboam, whatever in English, he came another guy which is Yorbaam. It's a similar Yorbaam in English, and these two split the nation into two parts, 2.5 tribes and the other 10 tribes. And with the split of the 10 tribes, Yorbaam didn't want to have the people returning back to Jerusalem, and their heart will go to the son of Jesse, which is David, where the real temple and the real things are then the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God, the sacrifice. So he decided to build for them altars and on the heights, on the mountains, everywhere, so they have their own things, and they will not have to go and worship God in Jerusalem. And there was the split, and the enmity was built between Israel, which is the 10 tribes, and Judah, which is in 2.5 tribes, all the life since the time of the son of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. But here is the situation. Is that temple of Elephantine temple similar? It's non-godly worship, like what happened in the time of the son of Solomon? No, this is a no. Why? Because I had a verse, but sorry, I don't have it in front of me now, which stated that when God's worship is not into that place, then he can be worshipped in another place. So because the temple of Jerusalem was destroyed, and the people were all, expelled from their country, so none of the existence of the Jewish people or the Israelites into the land anymore, and none of the existence of God was there anymore. So that temple of the Elephantine was a true worship of the true God. It was exactly like Shiloh, a real presence of God. Later on, when they disobey God, God, decide that Shiloh will not be anymore the name where His name will dwell. So I want you to put a respect for that, but I'm going to talk about the archaeology and what happened, because there was a discovery of thousands of manuscripts on papyrus, and can you go up and see وتديني الشارجر بتاع الكمبيوتر please, because it may disconnect. So here what happened, what we're talking about now. We're talking about the temple was given, we're talking about the thousands of papyrus paper who was written, and they were written into the original Egyptian language, in the Aramaic language, in the Coptic language. And I'm gonna read all the language for you from the article now. And all those are thousands of them. They were talking about documents of all sorts of things going with the Jewish community was living into that time. But later on, what happened, that those documents were taken, stolen, and I'm gonna tell you the story as we go. So the Elephantine papyri consists of 175 documents from the Egyptian border, which is called the Fortress of Elephantine, and Sayin, which is Aswan, which yielded hundreds of papyri in Hieratic, Demotic, Egyptian, Aramaic, Greek, Latin, Coptic, spanning a period of 2,000 years. So you cannot ignore such writings. And it was done on the Aramaic language of Jesus, not on the Greek. So, and they found even among them Bible written into the Aramaic language where Jesus language was. So in fortress of Elephantine fortress, it means qal'a. It means a very, very strong establishment, like military establishment. That's why we can say, you know, that they had that job of defending. But of course, this is a story. I really, the document include letters and legal contracts from family and other archives, and are thus an invaluable source of knowledge for scholars of various disciplines such as epistolography, law, society, religion, language, and onomastics. So they are a collection of ancient Jewish manuscripts dating from the 5th century BC, before Christ. They come from a Jewish community at the Elephantine, and they call them Yeb, Y-E-B, and maybe Israel, maybe Hebrew. The island of the Nile at the border of Nubia. It's on the Nuba, it's border of Aswan and Sudan, which is probably founded by a military installation in about 650 BC during the time of Manasseh reign. That's a Jewish character, I mean Bible character, to assist the Pharaoh Psammetichus I in his Nubian campaign. I'm reading from the article. The dry soil of Upper Egypt preserved these documents from the Egyptian border fortress of Elephantine and Aswan. Hundreds of these Elephantine papyri written in hieratic demonic, we said that before. So those are legal documents, and a catch of letters survived, turned up on the local gray market of antiquity. They treat them as just antiquity, starting into the late 19th century, and were scattered into several Western collections. So the people stole all those papyrus and they were scattered. So the whole thing was not really studied in an appropriate way, even though you see, like the pharaohs, they left Hagar Rashid, which is like only one stone, and they decipher the Egyptian language. But this one are a papyrus of language. Okay, just leave it and حطه عندك فوق وانا باجي اخده. خليه عند الحرف السلم. So the papyrus here are language that we can speak. So why are those papyrus were not interpreted? You know, they took all the time to decipher the Hagar Rashid, which was really very old unspoken language, when this papyrus having a whole part of the history of the Jewish community. And why Jewish important? Because they are the people of God. That this is where the Jehovah was dwelling. So it's not like any religion or any part of the history. Really, I really don't know, but maybe the truth is hidden. That's what I believe, because this is very, very, you know, confronting truth. When I've seen that and I read it, I was just like, something in my spirit was moved, and I felt that's part of the real truth. Why no one speak about it? And I dare to get that video done for you to have a bit of idea. So though some fragments on papyrus are much older, the largest number of papyri are written in Aramaic, the lingua franca of the Persian Empire, and document the Jewish community among soldiers stationed at Elephantine under Persian rule. Persia, I want to remember that word, I keep forgetting. So it's from 495 to 399 BC. The Elephantine documents include letters and legal contracts from family and other archives, like divorce document, manumission of slaves, other business, and are a valuable source of knowledge about the law, society, religion, language, and onomastics, the sometimes surprisingly revealing study of names. So this is in the core of everything we need to know, and it's just like scattered, stolen. Western culture stole this and didn't show what they didn't want to show and show what they want to show. The Passover letter of 419 BC, discovered in 1907 which gives details instruction for properly keeping the Passover in the Egyptian Museum of Berlin. Lord, help me to understand this part. Why are those things? I just have to bring the power, otherwise I will disconnect. So sorry for that interruption. I have not much time to go, but I'll do my best. We're not going to talk about the German and how Hitler was after all this all the time now, because I don't have time. It was at the time that scholars finally realized that the Wilbur had acquired the first elephantine papyri. And Wilbur is probably an archaeologist. He got those first and he took them back to his country in America. The Jews had their own temple to Yahweh, evincing polytheistic belief which functioned alongside that of whom evacuation work done in 1967. So back in 67, when they start to restudy those things, revealed the remains of the Jewish colony centered on a small temple. There is something called the Petition of Bagaus. It's a collection of letters written in 407 BC to Bagaus, the Persian governor of Judea. So that's Judea governor, appealing for assistance in rebuilding the Jewish temple in Elephantine. So they wanted to rebuild it or to keep it, which had recently been badly damaged by an anti-Semitic rampage on the part of a segment of the Elephantine community. There was an attack on the Jewish on that, and he asked for help to resuscitate or to keep it. In the course of this appeal, the Jewish inhabitant of Elephantine speak of the antiquity of the damaged temple. Now our forefather built this temple in the fortress of Elephantine back in the days of the kingdom of Egypt. We call him kingdom. And when Cambyses came to Egypt, he found it built. There is a Bible verse which I should really be knowing it, because I found it in the Bible, that there was a king who, before the time of Babylonian and the Assyrian, and he went on the temple of Jerusalem and took everything. This is in the Bible. It's in the king somewhere. I'll find it, maybe King 12 or 14. In the Bible you may find it. And he took everything. And later on, when we read the things which is written about the Babylonian, he keeps saying, they took the water, see the pillars, the gold, this and this and this, all the tools of the temple, but they never mentioned the ark. So this was the beginning of me finding that truth. I was searching, is it possible that the Ark of Covenant is hidden in Egypt? And I found that article that I'm speaking about. So there is a good chance that the ark was taken by that king who invaded the land before Sanharib, the Assyrian king, and before Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel. There was an Egyptian king. He went there and he wiped the surface and he took everything in the. So probably the most valuable is all gold. He took the covenant, the ark first, because Egyptians have a lot of things to do with this kind of arks and those gods. So I will not be surprised. It's just questions, and I'm not an archaeologist. I'm a Bible student, but part of the truth is hidden in the history. That's why I am interested to speak those things to you and take your time to let you read this. So now the forefather built this temple, you said, in the kingdom. Then the Persians, knocked down all the temples of gods of Egypt. when Persia came, they knocked the god's temple. But the one did any damage to this, no one did any damage to that temple. So the Persian rescued or left or saved the temple, the Elephantine temple, where they knocked the all other temple of the other gods. I should be really look at the time. And the community also appealed for aid to Sanballat. Sanballat is a Samaritan potentate and his son Delaiah and Shelemiah, as well as Johanan ben Eliashib. Both Sanballat and Johan were mentioned in the book of Nehemiah 2, 19, 12, and 23. So this there was a response of both governors. Baglios, like we said, that he was the Persian governor of Judea, and Delaiah, which gave the permission by decree to rebuild the temple, and it's written in the written form to rebuild it on its site as it was formerly. So they give a written to keep the temple. By the middle of the 4th century BC, the temple Elephantine has ceased to function, and we said why, because it took the place of the former temple of Yahweh. But Jewish life in ancient Egypt, a family archive from the Nile Valley, which featured that the interfaith couple of Anania, an official at the temple of Yahweh, and his wife was previously an Egyptian slave owned by a Jewish master. Some related exhibition dictates on 2002 include comments about significant structural similarities between Judaism and ancient Egyptian religion, how they easily coexisted and blended at the Elephantine. That's what I was talking about now, that there is, you can see into the pharaoh's, drawing, exactly like the Ark of Covenant with the two arms that they've been lifted. I think it's Nabus, the king, or whatever, the god of Nabus, or something like that. Very similar to the structure of the Ark of Covenant. So there is really, they knew a lot. So here is the thing, like they are always at Egypt. They are always at Egypt, and they had that temple for a long time in the history, and there was a transfer, a total transfer of the Jewish things from and the temple. So you would imagine that the temple and the worship, the Babylonian people on that time, that they don't have any temple to worship, so they teach people to do good things, good works, and whatever, and prayer, but there was no animal sacrifice. The animal sacrifice was only in the temple, which was the Elephantine. So this is part of the Jewish heritage, Jewish history, instead of being demonstrated in a good way and having these papyrus, which are many, and explain them and declare them part of the history. It was hidden somehow, because the Jews who are not Jews are not interested. The Western world are not interested to give credit to this. That's why really I think the Orthodox Egyptian people are the people who receive Christ in certain time, because they have the right seed. They're probably the seeds of Abraham, and I would not be really thinking differently apart. They are from the Judah line, the people who immigrate to that part of the land, and they're telling you later on that they left. The Jewish had acted as mercenaries to the Persian colonies, means soldiers who are paid to do the defense. So when the latter were ousted by the Egyptian in about 400 BC, the Jewish were in danger. There was a danger about the Jewish now, because now the Babylonian empire finished and they come the Greek. So those Jews who are on the border, who are friend or alliance with the Iranians, the Persians, they're not anymore, and they were military. So they were a bit more like a threat for the new empire. So what happened to those Jews? The Jews were in danger and might even have been considered traitors. So what happened to them? They are not in, there is no record into the documents Hopefully they were not murdered, but more probably they're assimilated and lived on with their Egyptian counterparts. This is, however, the other possibility they may that they escape. So they probably mingled, intermarried with the Egyptian, because Egyptian people are highly ranked on that time. Everyone looking at them as gods, and married to, like, if you marry an American, you from the other part of the world, this is like higher, as an upgrade for you. So this is here why I believe that the Orthodox Egyptian are the part of the one who ran with Jeremiah to Egypt. And here Egypt was not only hosting the people of Israel, the 70 children of Israel, of Jacob, and Joseph and all that for 430 years, but here again the whole worship was shifted to Egypt again, the true worship. Because the Babylonian that didn't worship God with animal sacrifice, those one did. So let me see how much of video we had. Yeah, it's another half an hour, so maybe I should be thinking of the Mishnah stated that some vows made in the temple of Jerusalem could be redeemed in the temple of Onias, and while a priest who served at Onias was precluded from serving in Jerusalem, this is the part that I wanted to mention, he could nevertheless eat the teruma, which is a consecrated food, there together with his priestly brethren, because there is no legitimate Zadokite priesthood over there, and there is nothing there, so they are allowed into this other nation. So while the Babylonian went into that craziness of Kabbalah and study all the Mesoteric and being mingled with the worship of idols, people who were in Egypt, they were really establishing a temple, gathering around that temple and doing animal sacrifice and worshiping God the exact way that was done by Moses, and even they did the all the not rituals, I don't want to use that word, but just a minute to get the right word. The Passover. They did the Passover. Even the Passover, they were celebrating the Passover on that time. So this is the story of the Jewish mercenaries at Elephantine, the soldiers who was Jewish at the southern border of Egypt. This was a military colony, and this is, it's more likely that the temple served the military colony under the direction of this Onias, acting in the capacity of an official willing to bring men. There is something about Onias temple which I don't have time to talk about it, but Josephus record that the two sons of Onias act as generals in assisting Cleopatra in her fight against her son Ptolemy Bethlehemos, and in that role the temple was similar to the earlier 5th century BC temple serving God, and he claimed that it was not an idolatrous shrine. That's important. It is not idolatry. That shrine was not like the one who was on the Samaritan and the 10 tribes they did. It was a real temple who was doing everything according to the law of the Jews. Because Onias had based himself on Isaiah 19, he said, one day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt. So that was a real so the story, it happened and it can happen again. So this is a good place to speak about that altar, which probably can come again. And because he was a legitimate Zadokite priest and a descendant of the high priest Simon the Just, so this worship was legitimate. It was a legitimate, even to the Passover, remembering the time that they left Egypt. So Egypt was always hosting the people of God. When Israel, in Hosea 11:1, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. This is a direct prophecy about Jesus, and it's direct prophecy about Israel as well. God called them out of Egypt. It's here again, the prophecy is making sense, and later on into the future, this prophecy will be talking about the Coptic Orthodox people, which are real Jews, but they do not know. This is the way they were hidden into this, and God hide them for the time. And why you're gonna deal with them harshly, the same way that you're gonna deal with the other ones on Jerusalem, because the trouble of Jacob will reach them even into the land of Egypt, and they will face the same confrontation of God. They have to renounce the idolatry and the idols and gods of Egypt and all the different religion thinking, because the Orthodox really they start well, but they didn't continue. They have nothing to do with the rapture coming. They have nothing to do with the Jewish culture things belonging to the Commonwealth of Israel. They have nothing to do with the millennium. They have nothing to do with all those things. They're just living in peace with the Muslim into that nation, giving that nation to them. And of course, that really saint worship, we spoke about it, have really to be dealt with, because this is really a religion that Jesus said, why do you ignore God's commandment and do the elder tradition? So worshiping the elders is not something that God will celebrate, and he has to deal with the Christian Egyptian there, awaken them. Until the time that someone will talk about those truths, I don't think that this article should be ignored, because there is a temple and there is a heritage and part of the history. They left, there was the first exile, and there will be another exile coming in the future, when the people who have to face the tribulation, the 7 years, they have to be exiled and going back to God, and all the other prophecy we spoke about them in the past. So I will say to the north, this is prophecy in Isaiah 43, give them up, and to the south, do not withhold them. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the end of the earth. God gonna gather all his children, starting from Egypt, Syria, Babylon, Cush, until the end of the earth. Everyone which is son of Abraham, real one, he will be called by a real aliyah from God, when he will whistle, the whistle of God will be whistled, and that's not the trumpet. The last trump, when the angel will call from heaven, and everyone belonging to God will be raptured. But this is a whistle, it's an earthly thing that they will come all together from every place, and they come for the worship of God in Israel. Brother and sister, I'll let you go now.